The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the dusty streets of Willow Creek in shades of amber and gold as Lillian Warren stepped off the stagecoach, her blue traveling dress wrinkled from the long journey. The year was 1876, and for a 22-year-old woman from Boston, the Wyoming Territory represented both an escape and a terrifying unknown. She clutched her small valise tightly, observing the rustic town that would now be her home. Preston Cooper noticed her immediately. Standing against the weathered post outside the general store, his hat tipped low over his eyes, he watched as she surveyed her surroundings with a mixture of determination and fear. Something about her posture, spine straight despite obvious exhaustion, caught his attention. Preston had spent 5 years driving cattle across these territories, and he recognized a fighter when he saw one. "Madam," he said, straightening as she approached the store, "you look lost." Lillian turned, startled by the deep voice. The man before her embodied everything she'd heard about Western cowboys: tall, broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, though, were surprisingly gentle. "Not lost," she replied with more confidence than she felt. "Looking for Mrs. Abigail Henderson." "I'm to be her new assistant at the schoolhouse." Preston raised an eyebrow. "Teacher died 3 months ago, influenza." Lillian felt the color drain from her face. "But I received correspondence, probably sent before she took ill." He shrugged. "Town's been without a teacher since." The news struck her like a physical blow. She had spent nearly every penny on the journey west, following the promise of employment and lodging. "I see," she managed. "You got somewhere to stay?" Preston asked, noting her distress. "I was to board with Mrs. Henderson." Preston removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled at his temples. "Town council's at the saloon. They've been trying to find a replacement. Might be your lucky day after all." As dusk settled over Willow Creek, Lillian found herself seated before 3 stern-faced men who comprised the town council. The smoky saloon was hardly the setting she'd imagined for a job interview, but necessity overrode propriety. "You have references?" asked Martin Holloway, the eldest councilman. Lillian produced letters from her previous position at a girls' school in Boston. "I've taught for 3 years, sir. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and history." The men exchanged glances. "Why'd you leave Boston?" asked another. Lillian hesitated. "Personal reasons," she said finally, unwilling to share the scandal that had forced her departure, a broken engagement, and the subsequent gossip that had made her position untenable. "Well, Miss Warren," Holloway said after examining her papers, "seems you're qualified. School's been closed too long already. Children are falling behind." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, sir. When might I begin?" "Monday. We'll see about getting the schoolhouse ready tomorrow." He turned to Preston, who leaned against the bar. "Cooper, show Miss Warren to the Henderson place. Everything still there might need airing out." Preston nodded, and Lillian found herself following the taciturn cowboy through the darkening streets. "Are you on the town council, Mr. Cooper?" she asked, trying to fill the silence. "No, madam. Just happened to be in the right place." He glanced at her. "I work for the Diamond R Ranch outside town. Come in for supplies every few weeks." "I see." She struggled to keep pace with his long strides. "Thank you for your assistance. Just being neighborly." He stopped at a small white house set back from the main street. "Here we are." The Henderson home was modest but tidy, with a small garden gone wild with neglect. Preston produced a key, unlocking the door and stepping inside to light a lamp. The interior smelled of dust and abandonment but was otherwise clean. "There's a well out back," he said, setting down her valise. "Should be some food in the pantry, but I can have the general store send over supplies tomorrow." Lillian surveyed what would be her new home, overwhelmed by the day's developments. "Mr. Cooper, I don't know how to thank you." "No need." He moved toward the door, pausing on the threshold. "Town's mostly decent folk. You'll be fine here." "Will I see you again?" The question slipped out before she could consider its propriety. Something flickered in his eyes, hesitation, perhaps. "I'll be around for a few days, then back to the ranch." As he turned to leave, Lillian found herself strangely reluctant to see him go. "Good night, Mr. Cooper." "Madam." He settled his hat back on his head and disappeared into the darkness. The schoolhouse, Lillian discovered the next morning, was in better condition than she had feared. The building was sound, with rows of desks facing a larger teacher's desk and chalkboard. A pot-bellied stove occupied one corner, and large windows allowed natural light to flood the space. She was sweeping dust from the floorboards when the door creaked open. Preston stood there, hat in hand, with a box of supplies. "Mr. Holloway asked me to bring these by," he explained, setting down the box. "Books, chalk, ledgers." "Thank you." Lillian tucked a stray lock of auburn hair behind her ear, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. "I wasn't expecting visitors." Preston's gaze swept over the room. "Need help with anything? Got a few hours before I need to be elsewhere." Together they cleaned the schoolhouse, working in companionable silence broken occasionally by questions about the town and its residents. Preston proved surprisingly knowledgeable about the families whose children would soon be Lillian's pupils. "The Thornton twins are trouble," he warned as they washed windows. "Smart as whips, but always scheming. Their father runs the livery. And the Miller children, good kids. Mother died last winter. Father's raising them alone, works the mine outside town." By midday, the schoolhouse gleamed, ready to welcome students. As they stepped outside, Lillian turned to Preston. "You've been extraordinarily kind, Mr. Cooper." "Preston," he corrected. "If we're going to keep running into each other." "Preston," she repeated, smiling, "and I'm Lillian." A hesitant smile transformed his features, softening the hard lines of his face. "Lillian," he nodded, "suits you." That evening, Preston escorted her to the town's only restaurant, insisting she needed a proper meal after their day of labor. The small establishment was busy, and their entrance drew curious glances. "You're the center of attention," Preston observed as they were seated. "New faces must be rare here. New female faces, especially." His expression grew serious. "Should warn you, unmarried women are precious commodities in these parts. You'll have suitors lining up once word spreads." The thought made her uncomfortable. "I didn't come here for that." "Why did you come?" His directness surprised her. Lillian considered how much to reveal. "I needed a fresh start. Boston had complications." "A man," she looked up sharply. "Is it that obvious?" Preston shrugged. "Common reason for people heading west, running from something or someone." "And you, what brought you to Wyoming?" A shadow crossed his face. "War ended, home wasn't home anymore," she understood immediately. "You fought for the Confederacy." "Texas cavalry," he confirmed, his voice flat. "Came west afterward, fewer questions here." The revelation created a strange intimacy between them. Both harboring pasts they preferred not to discuss, both seeking reinvention in this frontier town. "Well," Lillian said after a moment, "we all deserve second chances, don't we?" Something in Preston's expression changed, a softening around his eyes. "Some more than others." Monday morning arrived with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. 27 children of varying ages filed into the schoolhouse, eyeing their new teacher with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. "Good morning," Lillian began, willing her voice to remain steady. "I'm Miss Warren, and I'll be your teacher." The day passed in a blur of introductions, assessments, and establishing rules. The children, while rowdy, seemed eager for education after months without formal schooling. By dismissal time, Lillian collapsed into her chair, exhausted but satisfied. A knock at the door roused her. Preston stood in the doorway, a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. "Thought you might need these after your first day," he said, looking almost embarrassed as he placed them on her desk. Lillian touched the delicate blooms. "How thoughtful! They're beautiful. How'd it go?" "Better than expected. They're bright children, if a bit unruly." Preston leaned against a desk. "Town's buzzing about you. General consensus is favorable." "I'm glad to hear it." She gathered her materials. "I should head back lesson plans to prepare. I'll walk you." Their strolls through town became a daily occurrence over the next week. Preston found reasons to delay his return to the ranch, helping with repairs at the schoolhouse or bringing supplies from the general store. Lillian found herself looking forward to their conversations, drawn to his quiet strength and unexpected kindness. On Saturday, he appeared at her door with his horse saddled. "Thought you might like to see more than just the town." The ride into the surrounding countryside revealed a landscape of breathtaking beauty. Rolling hills gave way to distant mountains, with wildflowers dotting meadows and hawks soaring overhead. They stopped beside a clear stream, spreading a simple picnic on a blanket. "I never imagined it would be so beautiful here," Lillian admitted, watching the water tumble over rocks. "Different kind of beauty than back east," Preston agreed. "Harsher maybe, more honest." She studied his profile as he gazed at the horizon. "You love it here." "It suits me." His eyes met hers. "Growing on you too, I think." "Perhaps it is." She surprised herself with the admission. As they rode back toward town, storm clouds gathered ominously. The first heavy drops fell when they were still a mile from Willow Creek. "Hold on," Preston instructed, spurring his horse faster. They reached a small abandoned line shack just as the downpour intensified. Preston helped her dismount and hurried her inside, securing his horse under the minimal shelter of the porch. The interior was dusty but dry, with a small fireplace and crude furnishings. Preston quickly built a fire while Lillian wrung water from her skirts. "Afraid we're stuck here until it passes," he said, straightening from the growing flames. Lillian nodded, suddenly aware of their isolation and the impropriety of their situation. "At least we're dry." The storm raged outside, thunder shaking the small structure. They sat before the fire, conversation flowing easily despite the circumstances. Preston spoke of his years driving cattle, of the characters he'd met on the trail. Lillian shared stories of her students, their progress and peculiarities. As evening approached, the storm showed no signs of abating. "We might need to stay the night," Preston said reluctantly. "It's not safe to travel in this." "The town will talk," Lillian murmured, thinking of her reputation. "I'll sleep on the floor," he assured her. "Your reputation matters here." "And in Boston it was destroyed for far less than this," she admitted, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Preston looked at her questioningly. "I was engaged," she explained, staring into the fire, "to a prominent man from a respected family. When I discovered his indiscretions with a friend of mine, I broke the engagement." "Seems reasonable." His family disagreed. "They spread rumors that I was the unfaithful one, that I was unstable, unsuitable. In a matter of weeks, I was unwelcome in homes where I'd once been embraced." Preston's jaw tightened. "Man should have stood up for you. He chose his family's wishes over the truth." She shrugged. "So I came west, where nobody knew my name or my shame." "His loss," Preston said simply. Lillian looked up, touched by his response. "You're not what I expected, Preston Cooper." "What did you expect?" "When I first saw you, a hard man, dangerous perhaps." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Still am in some ways. Not to me." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of growing feelings neither had intended. Preston moved first, standing abruptly. "You should rest. Take the cot. I'll keep watch." The storm passed overnight, leaving a fresh, washed landscape bathed in early morning light. They rode back to town in contemplative silence, both aware that something had changed in the confines of that simple shack. As expected, their overnight absence generated whispers. Lillian faced them directly, explaining about the storm to anyone who asked. The town's matrons watched her with suspicion, but her students remained oblivious to adult concerns. Preston, however, grew distant. He avoided the schoolhouse, and when Lillian encountered him on the street, his manner was cordial but reserved. "You're avoiding me," she finally said, cornering him outside the general store 3 days after their adventure. "Trying to protect your reputation," he corrected. "By acting as though we have something to hide," Preston sighed. "Lillian, I'm not the kind of man a teacher should associate with. I believe I can determine that for myself." "I'm heading back to the ranch tomorrow," he said abruptly. "Stayed too long already." The news struck her harder than she'd anticipated. "I see. It's for the best." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "You're building something here, don't need complications." "Is that what you are, a complication?" Preston finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I'm a drifter, Lillian. A cowhand with nothing to his name but a horse and saddle. You deserve better." Before she could respond, he touched his hat and walked away, leaving her standing alone on the boardwalk. The following weeks passed with agonizing slowness. Lillian threw herself into teaching, organizing a small library for the town, and starting evening classes for adults who wished to improve their reading. She made friends among the townspeople, particularly Martha Jenkins, the baker's wife, who took Lillian under her wing. "That Cooper fellow came back to town yesterday," Martha mentioned casually one afternoon as they shared tea. "Asking about you, though he didn't say as much." Lillian's heart quickened despite her best intentions. "Oh, asked if the school was doing well, if the town was treating you right." Martha smiled knowingly. "Man rides 15 miles just to ask after a woman he's not interested in." "It's not like that," Lillian protested. "Maybe not for you," Martha replied, "but I've known Preston Cooper for 3 years, and I've never seen him linger in town for anyone." That evening, a knock at her door revealed Preston, hat in hand, looking uncertain. "Evening, Miss Warren," he said formally. "Mr. Cooper." She matched his tone while her pulse betrayed her. "What brings you to my door? Wanted to check that everything's all right." "Perfectly fine, thank you." She didn't invite him in. Preston shifted uncomfortably. "I'll be in town for a few days, ranch business. I'm sure you'll be quite busy then." He looked at her directly. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow at the restaurant?" The invitation surprised her. "I thought you were concerned about complications." "I am," he hesitated. "But I can't stop thinking about you, and that's a complication I didn't account for." The honesty of his admission disarmed her. 7 o'clock, she said finally. "Don't be late." Dinner proved to be a turning point. With the restaurant's curious eyes upon them, Preston spoke of his life before Wyoming, a childhood in Texas, his service in the war, the difficulty of returning to a home transformed by defeat and occupation. Lillian shared more about Boston, her teaching, the dreams that had sustained her through difficult times. "I should have written," he admitted as they walked back to her house, "while I was at the ranch." "Yes, you should have," she agreed. "I'm not good with words on paper." "Practice improves many skills, Mr. Cooper." He smiled at her teasing tone. "I'll remember that." At her door, he hesitated. "May I call on you again? Tomorrow? I'd like that." Their courtship progressed slowly over the following months. Preston found work at the local livery between his stints at the ranch, allowing him to remain in town for longer periods. Lillian watched as he integrated himself into the community, gaining respect for his hard work and fair dealings. By Christmas, 6 months after their first meeting, Preston had become a fixture at community gatherings, often at Lillian's side. The town's initial gossip had faded, replaced by tacit acceptance of their relationship. The holiday celebration at the schoolhouse brought the community together, with children performing recitations and carols. As families filed out into the snowy evening, Preston lingered, helping Lillian extinguish lamps and tidy the festive decorations. "Walk with me," he asked when they finished. Outside, snow fell in gentle flakes, illuminated by the full moon. Preston led her to the town's small park where a bench overlooked the frozen pond. "Been thinking a lot," he began, brushing snow from the seat for her. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, "for some." He smiled briefly before growing serious. "When I came west, I didn't plan on staying anywhere. Thought I'd keep moving, never putting down roots." Lillian studied his face in the moonlight. "And now I find myself wanting something I never expected." He took her gloved hand in his. "A home. A purpose," he paused. "Someone to share it with." Her heart quickened. "Preston, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I'm not a wealthy man, Lillian. Don't have much to offer except hard work and loyalty, but I love you. Have since that day in the storm, maybe before." The declaration hung in the cold air between them. Lillian felt tears spring to her eyes, not from sadness but overwhelming emotion. "I love you too," she whispered. Relief washed over his features. "Then would you consider marrying me, becoming Mrs. Cooper?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, I would." He kissed her then, tenderly at first, then with growing passion that left them both breathless. When they parted, Preston's expression clouded slightly. "Need to tell you something," he said, "before you commit." "What is it?" "I'll only break your heart," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm not the man you deserve. My past—" "Then break it softly, Cowboy," she interrupted, smiling up at him through tears. "I trust you with it completely." The spring wedding was the social event of the season in Willow Creek. The entire town turned out to witness the union of their schoolteacher and the cowboy who had won her heart. Lillian wore a cream-colored dress with lace Martha had ordered specially from Denver, and Preston stood tall in a new black suit, his weathered face solemn, until the moment she appeared at the church doors. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises of loyalty, respect, and enduring love exchanged before a community that had become family to them both. The Diamond Artique's owner, impressed by Preston's reliability, offered the couple a small parcel of land on the ranch's edge, with permission to build a home and raise a few head of their own cattle. Preston accepted gratefully, seeing the opportunity to create something permanent. Through the summer, he worked double shifts, ranch duties by day, house building in every spare moment. Lillian continued teaching, returning each evening to their temporary lodgings in town with plans and ideas for their future home. By autumn, the modest house was complete enough for occupancy: 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a porch facing the mountains. They moved in on a golden October day, carrying their few possessions across the threshold together. "Welcome home, Mrs. Cooper," Preston said, watching her reaction as she surveyed the rooms he'd built with his own hands. "It's perfect," she whispered, turning in a slow circle. "Absolutely perfect." That night, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains, Preston took her hand. "Happy?" "Beyond words," she assured him. "Are you?" "Never thought I'd have this," he admitted. "After the war, figured I'd die alone somewhere, just another drifter. And now I have everything worth living for." He kissed her palm. "A home, purpose. You." Life settled into a rhythm, Lillian teaching in town during the week, Preston working the ranch and their growing herd of cattle. Weekends were spent together, improving their home, riding across their land, planning for the future. The following spring brought news that filled them both with nervous excitement. Lillian was expecting their first child. Preston's reaction was a mixture of joy and terror, his face paling then flushing as he absorbed her announcement. "A baby," he repeated, voice hoarse. "We're having a baby." "In November," she confirmed, watching him carefully. "Are you pleased?" He gathered her in his arms, holding her as though she were made of glass. "Please doesn't begin to describe it," he whispered against her hair. "Terrified fits better." She laughed softly. "We'll learn together." As Lillian's body changed with the growing child, Preston became increasingly protective, insisting on driving her to and from the schoolhouse despite her protests. The town watched their happiness with approval, women offering advice and baby clothes, men slapping Preston's back in congratulation. In late November, after a difficult but ultimately successful labor with the town's midwife attending, Lillian gave birth to a healthy daughter they named Emma Rose. Preston, who had paced outside for hours, entered the bedroom with trepidation, his hands trembling as he approached the bed where Lillian held their swaddled infant. "Come meet your daughter," Lillian said softly. Preston sat beside them, staring in wonder at the tiny face. "She's perfect," he whispered, a single tear tracking down his weathered cheek, "just like her mother." As winter settled over the land, the Cooper family established new rhythms around their infant daughter. Lillian took a temporary leave from teaching, focusing on motherhood while Preston worked tirelessly to provide for his expanded family. Evening found them gathered before the fireplace, Emma sleeping in her cradle while they discussed their dreams for her future. "She'll be educated," Preston insisted one night. "College if she wants it. Everything I never had." Lillian smiled, touched by his determination. "And if she wants to be a rancher like her father, then she'll be the best the best rancher in Wyoming." He grinned. "But she'll still know her letters and figures." By spring, Lillian had returned to teaching 3 days a week, bringing Emma with her. The arrangement raised eyebrows initially, but the sight of the schoolteacher with her infant soon became an accepted part of Willow Creek's daily life. On Emma's first birthday, Preston surprised Lillian with a small piano for their home, ordered months in advance, and transported at considerable expense from Cheyenne. "So you can teach her," he explained as Lillian stared in amazement at the instrument. "And because I love hearing you play." Life wasn't without challenges. Drought struck the following summer, threatening their cattle and testing Preston's resolve. Winter blizzards sometimes isolated their home for days. Illness swept through town occasionally, bringing worry when Emma developed fevers. Through it all, their partnership deepened. Preston's initial warning about breaking her heart proved both true and false. There were disappointments and disagreements, moments of hurt and misunderstanding. But these were balanced by profound joy, unwavering support, and a love that grew more resilient with each passing season. 5 years after their wedding, with Emma now a curious, spirited child and a second baby, a son they named James, completing their family, Lillian found Preston on their porch one evening, staring at the sunset. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, joining him. "Remembering the day we met," he replied, pulling her close. "How lost you looked stepping off that stagecoach." "I wasn't lost," she corrected. "I was exactly where I needed to be. To think I almost rode out without speaking to you," she laughed softly. "Fate wouldn't have allowed it." "Fate," he mused, "or the best luck of my life." Inside, they could hear Emma chattering to her baby brother, who responded with happy gurgles. The house smelled of baking bread and the wildflowers Lillian had arranged that morning. Their home, built with Preston's hands and filled with Lillian's warmth, stood as testament to what they'd created together. "Remember what you said?" Lillian asked. "That you'd only break my heart," Preston nodded, "was terrified of disappointing you. And I told you to break it softly." She rested her head against his shoulder. "But you didn't break it at all. You made it whole in ways I never imagined possible." As darkness fell over the Wyoming landscape they both had come to love, Preston Cooper held his wife close, marveling at how a chance encounter had transformed two wounded souls seeking escape into a family bound by choice and love. The cowboy who had warned of heartbreak had instead become the keeper of her heart, and she of his a partnership forged in the wildness of the West and tempered by the passing years into something enduring and true.